If you're struggling with change and resistant to change, consider the power of choice, the power of awareness, and really pay attention to the facts so you can stay on target with those facts. And then consider how you're making energetic exchanges. As these unconscious things become conscious, what you'll quickly do is notice that once you try that and experience it, your unconscious and conscious just take it and run with it. And you all of a sudden find that a whole bunch of things that you thought were problems are no longer a problem. Hey everybody, Jeff here. Before we get started, if you're getting value from the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you listening on podcast apps, don't forget to rate and review. Your support really helps the show reach more people. And for that, I am truly grateful. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome to The Point. Today is an exciting day as we hit 2 years of podcasts. The feedback is that the show's been a great example for many of you to have really experienced and been able to get really involved in understanding the value of starting and get some acceptance around the idea of starting and releasing this value of perfection or the illusion of perfection and the illusion that things have to be a certain way for you to move forward into something, and experience this idea of grace, and that once you start, you can have a baseline to grow from. And then you've been able to see many clients and other people pay attention to the first episode of this and then pick one 20, 30 down the road and then another one, and look at 3 or 4 of these episodes and notice the difference in quality, the difference in the types of annotations that are made in the podcast notes, as far as the index of what time we spoke, that we spoke about different things, and also the sound quality or video quality. A lot has changed since we began, and had we never started, we wouldn't be where we are today. And isn't that the way life works? There's an opportunity to evolve. Great feedback has come back that the topics are too broad, speaking to just about anybody, and that's true. I believe that is true. I have been naturally in the way I am somewhat I've learned to speak in a way that make space and room for anybody to hear something that might move you forward. So if you're sitting there and you've heard something that has drawn you closer to better ideas and to challenge the beliefs you have and to consider thinking differently, and that's benefited you, that's awesome. But really this show is for you. This show is for you, and you, if you're here, want to have a different experience with change, want to have a different experience with your emotions, and want to have a different experience with the results you're getting in life. Many of you are having great results and want them even better. As a matter of fact, one of you right now listening, I know, is still in that mindset of all or nothing, of it's going to burn up, it's going to be a fireball, fall into the earth, or it's going to be an amazing subsonic superstructure or something, right? And that's just not the reality. So we're moving into a reality of something much different, and we're talking about how to challenge and change the way we're thinking to embrace and open ourselves to flow and move further away from the limiting nature of transactional processes and relationships, whether it's with work, business, or self even, and our relationship with the universe and our expression spiritually with whatever your beliefs are. What does that look like for you? This show is really for the person that wants to consider change differently. So there's the thought of getting more targeted and specific. So I'm opening this up to request and feel the gratitude for any feedback that you want to share. What do you want to hear? What do you want to consider? What topics would you like to mix up and talk about? What guests would you like to see? Is there a story that you have that you'd like to be heard? We're opening the books to just say, to just listen to what you have to say for what you want from this show. The intention of this next season is to become much more intentional and targeted to be of service to you. As a kickoff to that today, you're going to get to think about and dive into this idea of change, which we've talked about many times before, but we're going to get into change and get into a list of survey results that came back about what change is for people and some feedback that came back on that. We're going to share that, and then we're going to talk about these cafes principle of what really happens with it. And, the notes I have here is, that cafe is an acronym, which I'm not going to focus much on the acronym, but just to give you an idea of what it is, it's the power of choice, awareness, facts, really acknowledging facts, energy and the exchange of energy, and strategies, the power of strategies. So the other thing that you get to have an opportunity to do is help rename this program. There was some feedback in order to be more targeted that we name the program to be kind of the name of the programming that we've written about and that we're expanding into different places. And it's the idea of designing strengths and quantum strengths. Designing strengths is taking the best of you through the form of self-discovery, surveying people you know and love, considering where you've been the most fulfilled, the least fulfilled, where it's felt clunky and smooth, when you felt like you were most in flow, really gathering some organic information, and then looking at some assessments, really looking at the strengths of how you process and what's the most fluid way for you to process. Another one would be from assessments like Clifton Strengths and the 70 years of science that brings, that proves on a scientific level the uniqueness in everyone's approach to things and the humility that brings. Although we have many similarities and we all belong and can fit and find our place of similarity, we're never alone. At the same time, what makes you unique is your perception and your approach. Most of us are running around in strategies. You are probably have a strategy right now that you deploy, that you work in, that you were taught and that you try and emulate, that you're not that happy with. It's not that comfortable for you, but you do that because that's what you were taught. And that's because you haven't had the opportunity to consider your greatest strengths and how you align. Many of us are reading books, listening to shows, podcasts, webinars, and other things, and just absorbing information and then trying to emulate that information versus taking it in and making it our own. And every speaker, everyone I know that is in the change business, that is working with people, coaching, everyone that is on a high level in this industry of driving change in the world and helping people consider new ideas around change and growing and building, developing leadership and all these things, none of them that I know have a significantly unique offer or idea that they want you to take on as them and just do what they do. Everyone wants you to take it in for yourself, make it your own, and move forward, improved and feeling better. The human spirit's naturally going to be grateful and thankful to the individual that shared the information, but we're all in flow, downloading information as we receive it and as we learn and grow to help others do the same. And the idea is that everyone can get into their own personal sense of ownership and not become mimics. Now, you may need to mimic for a while. That's certainly a strategy that I've used to practice a behavior or a strategy that someone else has done to see how it feels. But at the end of the day, the idea is to make it your own. What do we call the show? What would you like the show to be called? What's your ideas, your references? The idea of designing strengths or quantum strengths or anything, we're open. So gratefully, joyously accepting feedback and ideas for that. And we're even open to ideas of how to make that fun for everybody. So that being said, we're moving on into the show and we're going to cover these things and knock it out really quick so that we can move on to the next. Feedback and results from the survey about change. The survey went out, change is with a blank. And the question was, people filled in that blank. Change is tough, hard, challenging, such a long process, exciting, difficult, takes forever, debilitating. I just got to read these. People don't change. That is such a thing. People don't change. Impossible, exhilarating, and fun is thrown in there. So some of these are duplicates that people wrote this or very close to it over and over and over. And some of these were, but this list is something else, right? Is change so challenging? Does it take forever? Is it really a long process? Is it impossible? People don't change. Now, that's really, somebody really isolated it down. They forgot that it said change is, and there's an attitude that says people don't change. One of the major parts of a seminar that we do in leadership when we're working with high-level executive teams and vice president and director teams is we talk about this idea of whether or not people change, what change is, and really consider the idea of what that reality is. And the reality is that most of us are all showing up and we're not really getting to know each other as well as we're getting to know each other's strategies. We're going to talk about that as we go through this idea of these cafe principles on change and really one way to start activating the idea of change faster. And one of them is to consider and evaluate your belief system around choice and what is the power of choice in relationship to change. The first question that I think is really that's really valuable for you to think about is, what is your belief around your ability to choose? Are you someone that believes you have no choice but to behave a certain way or approach change a certain way? That's usually because there's something underneath that for you. And then the question is, what's underneath that? What is the thing you're so opposed to that you're protecting that you don't want to, you've got it walled off and protected? So if you consider what that is, and if that's causing you to believe that that's what is not giving you a choice, we can still turn that around and you can still be at choice to protect that. But opening yourself up to understand what it is that you do believe about the power of choice can open up the idea to start considering something different about how change works. Because we'll get that in the facts. The next is the power of awareness. That goes straight into the idea of being aware of what you believe and what you're protecting through your beliefs. What stories are you telling yourself? And really getting into the idea of understanding that. If you believe, the power of believing that you're at choice and that you can gain awareness is that you then open up the doors of freedom to be able to pick and choose the things that really hit the value systems that you want to portray. And many of you have found at some point in your life, maybe right now, that you've ended up in a position where your behaviors are valuing something that isn't accurate to who you want to be or the person you're looking to be. That's a very common, natural human thing that happens. So being in this place of experiencing and expressing the power of always being at choice, there's a necessary to have this power of awareness and this ability to really look at what are the behaviors, what are the beliefs and stories that are protecting the values that have become my identity. And if they're not in the intentional identity we want, then breaking those down. That awareness really helps unlock those things and have the right questions to start evaluating how we can fall into this flow where change is natural and effortless. And later we'll talk about strategies, but the idea is that one of the challenges here when you're in awareness, you will notice that some of these strategies have become a part of your identity. They worked so well or were so powerful that you attach them to your identity. Later we'll get into the power of strategies is that you can pick and choose all the time and really learn different strategies so that you can then be at more of a powerful place of choice and have more opportunities of how to respond to things because you're not being as protective. Whatever you're protecting may not need to be protected as well as you think it does. That usually comes from the beliefs and stories that you've created. So awareness of these, of our behaviors, being able to see them for what they really are is a significant superpower. Next, we get into the power of facts and identifying and acknowledging facts. Along with that is encompassing the idea of the difference between the facts and the stories that we make up about those facts, which is pretty easy to do. I was in a volunteer situation where somebody was asking me to take on the batons. They were saying, hey, will you do this project? It was a simple thing. I was like, yeah, get out of here, because I really thought they were given something to do and they were trying to get out of it to give it to me. Right? The fact is they handed me this thing so I could do this task. And I was like, get out of here. Well, then a few minutes later, I realized that the fact is that person was in charge of orchestrating, handing out the tasks. And the perception I gave them was that I'm unwilling to help, but I wasn't noticing the facts. I was making up a story that they had been given a task that they were trying to get out of. Don't even know where that came from. It was all in good fun, no negativity about it, but it's interesting. It's a good illustration for how it works, and that maybe helps you think about areas where where there's been a fact that if you notice it, it completely changes the whatever the story is that's made up. So once you realize the fact, and you can shift and change very quickly and do that, that can get a lot more intense and different when we're in a judgmental stance or we've been affected negatively by someone else's behavior. We start making stories up around what things mean when they say things and all this other garbage that comes with it. So the power of really identifying the facts and sticking with those helps us also stay at choice and is a big piece of that awareness. It comes from that great power of awareness. The next is the power of energetic exchange and how we exchange it. Being really intentional about the energy we're putting out there. Are we in the energy of being at service? Are you targeting wanting to speak to people and walk away from them with them feeling better about themselves than when you first saw them? Are you being an encouraging, kind person? Or are you thinking of yourself and taking care of yourself? You get to judge and evaluate and be there, but the power of that energetic exchange of what will keep you in flow and in a more of a freedom of choice. Oftentimes when somebody deserves some type of behavior or response from us, we're actually taking away our own choice and we're falling into their pattern of what they need. If someone upsets you and then you mirror whatever it is that they're sending you and give them back that upset behavior, then you may not be at choice. You might be of full choice and say, no, this is how I'm going to respond. And you may also not be at choice. This whole process and flow will take you down that road. So understanding the value of keeping energetic exchanges, whether it's with finances, with relationships, keeping high frequency, positive energetic exchanges and everywhere we can is extremely beneficial, and it is another superpower that helps you with change. The final piece of this is the strategies, right? So you got to consider the strategies that you're using. You may be using a strategy that someone else gave you or taught you, or that you learned from a book or from a podcast like this, and it works for you in a certain targeted way, but it doesn't work for everything, or it doesn't work for you, but you know it works in theory, so you're doing your best to try and move forward with it. The idea of designing strengths is to use the best of your abilities and your natural way of approaching things to get into a flow state with the strategy that works for you by adapting, allowing yourself to have your own way with a certain strategy that works for you, but having the freedom to consider all of these strategies across the board and be able to freely and quickly move in between them so that different parts of your strengths can be applied differently to different situations. So that becomes the nuance of you. Now, moving into quantum strengths, once there's a good feel and understanding of how you best move forward for yourself that delivers the impact in the world you're looking for and naturally allows the result that's meant to be there, that was put in your heart to attain, that you set a target or a goal on wanting to achieve. Now you're in a place of flow and ability. There's no stuck feeling at this point. There's a freedom to move against and with all of the different strategies. And that is the nuance of you. Once you're here, you can consider that within the quantum, right? That you can consider that within all of the resources available in the universe. Really, as Jung says, connecting, allowing what's in the unconscious to become conscious, which allows you to completely individuate and be the person you're meant to be as nature would suggest is possible and is most beneficial. Now, if everybody is that unique in their perspective, you can be in complete unison with the people around you because they are also very unique, and you can observe and share in those strategies, observe and share in those perceptions and in your approaches. The approaches about the strategies or just the ways of being that you utilize to move forward. You can watch and share everyone else's and find your own way. And if we're all acknowledging of this beautiful difference of all of us, then we're all very, very unique, just like everyone else. There's a humbleness that comes to that because it starts to remove judgment and it starts to increase everyone's ability around us. You can understand in a group, and if you're looking at a group or a family structure, even in a business structure or a small volunteer team, you can start looking at everyone's potential approach to things and see how everyone can move forward faster, smoother, easier through the goal. So how does this relate for you to change? We have all these beliefs. Let's just talk about facts for 1 minute. If you're looking at the facts and you're telling yourself something that's a story that isn't necessarily a fact, and you're saying change is tough or hard or it takes forever, think of electronics and computer processing from where it was in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when we came from Atari and all these different Radio Shack type of elements, right? That were radio waves and bulbs. And oh my gosh, going from that to where we are now with AI computing, change over time is accelerating and becoming faster. So just acknowledging that, if we're not changing how we think to keep up with that, we're feeling left behind. If you're feeling left behind, feeling fear, like there's no hope, like there's nothing you can do, or if you're engaged and you're feeling some form of excitement, but you're still thinking that change is challenging, tough, difficult, there's a way to laterally connect what we're seeing in the world, which is that change is getting faster, easier. What's really difficult is not the change. The change, once it happens, is instant. Challenges our resistance and our struggle with change. So if you're struggling with change and resistant to change, consider the power of choice, the power of awareness, and really open yourself up. Be willing and express the willingness to open yourself up to any awareness that you're meant to have. Really pay attention to the facts so you can stay on target with those facts. And then consider how you're making energetic exchanges inside of these things that you're concerned about or that you're moving through. And then look at your strategies. Doing that on the realm of looking at what's best about you and how you move forward, you will quickly find a lot of change happening very fast. As these unconscious things become conscious, you will find in designing strengths, the most feedback is that you set a few short-term goals and really consider in practice all the different possibilities using your strengths to approach that goal that are different from what you've automated. And what you'll quickly do is notice that once you try that and experience it, your unconscious and conscious just take it and run with it. And you all of a sudden find that a whole bunch of things that you thought were problems are no longer a problem. So we just did a reset with a client and looked at all the goals up to now because things were starting to feel less accomplished over the last few weeks. There was a huge breakthrough, and then it was like, wait, so we went back to the structure. They were looking for more structure, like, hey, it's time to really look at how we're planning this out to get more out of this as we go. And we went back and it was like, wow, these problems I had, the goals I had when I started, it's always important in these processes to go back and look at the original goal and then reset them. You find that there's a human journey. You have goals, you have ideas of things you want, and then you have agreements that you make, decisions you make of how you're going to address those. And then we make agreements. You get a team of people. You use all your resources and consider what are the agreements I'm going to make that are going to do this. And then you find that you gain awarenesses. And from those awarenesses, you adjust the goals and you start resetting. As you go through that, the thing that gets noticed is that all of these things that were problems are gone. They're not even considered big problems. They're simple because you were able to connect the design of your strengths into that quantum resource of understanding all the possibilities. Your conscious, unconscious mind completely linked on and made the change. Consider those things. That is the point today. It's exciting to consider this entire show evolving and speaking more directly to you, your change, and the things you want to get to in life, what you want the impact of your life to be in 90, 100, 200 years. If you're looking only at 50 years or 10 years, what is the impact of that? And how can you get there smoother and easier? Maybe change is not anything that you thought it was or anything that you've been telling yourself it is. And the words you're using in order to move forward could be changed and make everything a whole lot different very quickly. So those are some tips, tricks, and fun ideas to think about. Until the next, love and peace to all. It is a wonderful time to be here with you. We look forward to hearing your feedback, and you guys make it a beautiful week.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. Please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.